Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Cyber Bulls. We hold this Cyber Bull space every Tuesday. We also do a live show every Friday. So let's get started with something fun here. Sawyer Merritt sent out this poll with 170,000 views, and he had almost 20,000 votes. So I want to see what the group here and anybody else in the audience thinks. His question was, in your opinion, what is the bigger issue for Tesla? What is the issue that's been affecting Tesla the most? Is it affordability? Is it the economy and macro conditions? Is it the awareness of pricing? Or is it production issues? Start with you, Jeff. What is your answer to that question?
I mean, they're growing. So I don't know if there's a real problem per se, but if you had to pick one, I mean, they're solving the affordability issue. So I think it's the awareness piece, if you want to say like what's remaining. Because again, I mean, I probably asked like that, 75 to 90% of the people that I asked in my circle, like, hey, do you realize that, Teslas are cheaper than, a standardized car, and you understand like the features and the performance you get at certain price ranges? None of them know it.
Go ahead, Xander. What's your answer? So is it affordability, the economy and macro conditions? Is it awareness of pricing? Is it production? I think I heard Jeff say he thinks it's awareness of pricing. What's your answer?
I think I like where Jeff was going with what's left to tackle, but for me, it's still macro. Originally, it was that there wasn't enough production. They didn't have enough factories. So, but currently, I think the interest rate environment is what's causing Tesla to drop prices. But so it's from a shareholder perspective, yeah, I could see. We don't like that. We'd wish they'd do other things before making the decision to drop the price. But did you pin the post to the top? I'm going to take a look at it again.
Yeah, I have not pinned it. Maybe you can help me find it. But yeah, I also answered the economy and macro conditions. It's at 38%. It was the number one answer out of 20,000 votes. Number two is affordability. And number three is awareness of pricing. And number four is production. So I don't know, Jeff, I don't know where you came from thinking awareness of pricing is higher than the economy and macro, which is the biggest issue. And affordability, every time they do a price cut, it is advertised everywhere. So people keep talking about advertisement. It's on the news. Everybody talks about it. My wife is aware whenever they do price cuts because she hears about it. So it really is affordability, which is very closely tied to the macro conditions. So Jeff, I'm shocked you came up with awareness of pricing. You better defend yourself, boy. Oh, he's afraid to defend himself, Xander.
Well, I'm fixing my audio. I don't think it's that bad either, but.
Oh, it's bad.
Are you in an echoey room?
How about now? Is it better?
A little bit better.
I know everybody's indoctrinated. There's a tweet that comes out that says this is the problem, and then everybody gets indoctrinated in our Twitter birds. But I think there's multiple issues. Like I said, it's not one thing and there's not one answer. So, but I do think awareness of pricing is a problem. And I think if there was a better understanding of that, you may be able to reach more people in different geographies. Again, I think Tesla is solving the macro issue by lowering their prices at a very rapid, in aggregate throughout the year, at a pretty rapid pace. I mean, it's down 25% from this point last year. So yeah, it all depends on what's your perspective and what you think are remaining issues.
And, obviously Sawyer's audience is going to be Tesla investors, most of it, but 20,000 votes, this is a significant number. So I was going to ask the question, what happens if you ask the same question to people who are not so, deep in the Twitter Tesla echo chamber? What would they say? And maybe awareness of pricing, they wouldn't know, but once they were told what the pricing is, they'll tell you that the awareness of pricing is probably the biggest issue. Because I think you're right in the sense that we are in a macro environment, but people are still buying, right? The economy's still chugging along, and it's just they're not aware that Teslas are cheaper at this point. Especially, they're not even aware of the IRA credits too, which I think maybe by January when that comes on. Do you want to tell folks more about that and what your thinking is, Jeff, on the impact of that it's going to be off the sticker price on January?
Yeah, in January, you're going to go to bed December 31st, and January 1st, you're going to wake up and you're going to have the option to transfer the credit to the dealer you're buying the car from. in case the Tesla shop or the service center or the center you're buying it from, and you're able to drive off the lot with a 3Y or a qualifying X, that's $7,500 cheaper than it was the day before. In the case of the 3 and Y, that's going to be a 15 to 20% price reduction in one day. And it's going to impact the monthly payment, which is what people are most sensitive to. So I think that's going to be a big deal. And I think they're going to know it, because it's going to be right there, in front of people's face. Anything Tesla can do to improve awareness be great. Like, oh, it's at the website. You go to the website, you can see it. Well, you got to know to go to the website and know that there's a 15 to 20% reduction option, which again, there's nothing on the web that points you to that unless you're in this 0.001% distortion field we're talking inside of right now. And again, I'm not a big like Tesla must advertise or they die kind of person. All I'm saying is they could test it. I'm a very scientific person. Pick a market, pick a defined population, understand their initial awareness, do some targeted advertising, understand their awareness after the advertising, and decide if you get an ROI or not. If you don't, change your approach and move on. But again, I don't want to turn this into an advertising show, but I just think there's multiple factors in that survey from Sawyer. And I think those factors are going to change. I do think the consumer is going to start getting a bit stressed here. They've been fine this year. It's been difficult. And I think Tesla's done the right thing with pricing to drive affordability. I think it is going to become more difficult. Again, a lot of people ask, the big automakers aren't having trouble with their sales. The reason is they were constrained for 3 years by a self-created supply chain issue that they created. And I'm inside. I advise clients in supply chain. I'm inside. I talk to these silicon vendors. I don't want to talk about one specific automaker or another. I'm just telling you that when COVID hit, they took their demand signals down, and they took them down at fabs that are 20, 30 nanometers in its fabs that there's not a whole lot of demand on, and they're not efficient for those fab vendors. So I don't want to get too far off track. I'm just saying that when people say like, well, the big three aren't struggling, they're not selling better than their pre-pandemic comps. They're not. And that's the issue. Tesla's 5 times their pre-pandemic comp. Tesla's actually doing okay. I'll pause there.
Let's get back to your first point, which is advertising. And so, yeah, let's talk about it. Did you guys, obviously heard this morning that this guy named Omar at 0717 reported that there's advertising in Japan. So Haneda Airport, there is advertising on the video walls on the Tokyo airport, in the video walls, and it had just exactly what you would expect. It looks like an actual commercial for the car, how to drive the car. It looks beautiful, beautifully well done. And then it's got scannable codes on each screen as well. So here they are advertising. Why Japan? Why in an airport, in Haneda Airport? What's going on here? So my thought was that this is more like a branding thing, because of course Japan is one of the kind of a very large auto market, but few are buying electric vehicles. It's like they're less than 1% at this point, probably because of Toyota, such a big behemoth brand there in Japan. Did I say Toyota? Yeah, Toyota. Yeah, correct. And then they're just trying to make sure that people are aware of their name, Tesla, in Japan. What do you guys think of why did they choose this place?
I don't know. Doesn't Japan drive on the other side anyway? Or am I mistaken in that regard? And then, so like left hand drive versus right hand. And maybe it was, a market that doesn't, like you said, order a lot of vehicles. And so they want to get awareness up.
Yeah. So advertising is actually happening. Okay. So did you guys see the tweet that I sent out this morning? Ray Chan kind of talking about that he thinks that the factories, and some people think, oh, that was just out of hand when he said that he thinks that they're 20 years ahead. And I know, Jeff, when we talk, you basically say 5 to 7 years, you think it's a generation ahead from the other factories for them to be able to copy that. And you and I did a show recently about the giga presses, where now we know that Toyota has been playing around with the giga press last year. They're thinking that their first car will be produced with gigacasting in 2026. And then 2 gigapresses were also sent out, one with Volvo and Geely, and the other one was a Chinese company called Aera. And so we know that these companies are now starting to buy these gigapresses. And you and I talked about how even though they have it set up, it's still going to take them a year longer to get going and get it moved. There's just so much to do other than that. But yeah, what do you guys think about this comment? Was it just an offhand 20 years? But this guy, Ray, he's Constellation Research. That's what he does. He does disruptive technology. He does research and he's very precise, but people think he just was an offhand comment. He's 20 years ahead. What do you guys
Well,
think?
they're way ahead. I mean, generationally, I was talking about vehicle design approach, but overall, manufacturing approach in design, factory design, they're way ahead. I don't know, it's 20 years. I mean, you're completely moronic if you can't figure something out inside of that cycle. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, there's leadership issues at these companies that's preventing them from doing great things. It's not that it takes 20 years to catch up to Tesla. It doesn't take 20 years to do that. But they've got deep leadership issues that are going to drive deep cultural issues. And, that's going to be the issue. But yeah, it's not 20 years, but, it's a sizable lead. And the issue is you're not seeing a huge sign of them catching up. Yes, you're seeing these giga castings being done. We have no idea where they're at in terms of performance. They could be in trial mode. They could be going back and still working on they are going to figure it out. And by the way, it's not binary with these castings. They're going to figure something out where they can combine a bunch of parts together. Are they going to have the structural rigidity and performance of a Tesla as from day one? Probably not. Are they going to have the dimensional stability, the yield, the cycle time that Tesla's getting? Probably not. But over time, castings will be figured out. And, Tesla will be on to the next thing. They're already on to the next thing. They're going to be, figuring out how to do probably the front and rear in one shot. Not one casting, but one shot of the die is probably the next thing that they're going to be doing. So they're going to be on to the next thing while these guys are trying to figure out how to get their first castings up. But in general, their approach to it's what takes a long time is the actual vertical integration of the design teams, where you have the software resources and the hardware resources basically under one roof in one company. That is the actual biggest for Tesla. Now, a Lucid and a Rivian are, much closer to that because they started more closer to that. But remember, Tesla, you can't just, Tesla didn't start up in, 2008 and like they were rolling out cars at, $35,000 each with over-the-air updates. And, it took Tesla time. And it's going to take these other startups time as well. But the biggest lead is just how the company is structured, how the company is led, how it's cost first, how it's simplicity first, how it's integrated software, integrated hardware, and then the supply chain wrapped around it. All of that is what's going to take time. In terms of like copying a factory or copying a gigapress, they can probably do that stuff a bit faster, but everything that goes into that is what's going to take them a much longer time.
What's quite interesting is we just talked about how, these factories are so far ahead, Tesla is so far ahead in factories, but the most competitive company right now is going to be BYD and the Chinese companies. And these guys are actually not automated. The BYD CEO himself came out, 6 months ago? And he said that they have 660,000 employees and they're just not that far ahead with automation. NIO is apparently quite automated, and they only have, I don't know, 20,000 plus. I don't know. I think it was in research and departments. I don't actually know how many employees they have, but you know what I mean? Like BYD is supposed to be the competitor, and yet they're cranking out these cars without the automation. So when does it catch up to them? When do they get, 'cause they're able to produce the cars at a low cost too. How does this work? How are they able to do that?
Well, I mean, first off, they purposefully design cars at lower price tiers. One, two is it's unclear if they have the same requirements in a vehicle in terms of test standards, reliability standards. But, that could be, maybe they do, but they purposely design vehicles at a lower price point. But when they go head to head with Tesla in the 30 to 40,000 US dollar range in China, they get beat. 40 to $50,000, they get beat. And yeah, and again, I'm very familiar with BYD. I've known the company for a long time. They have some pretty big issues, but the big advantage they have that Tesla actually doesn't have at this point is a battery, their own bad design and supply chain. And I know Tesla's on a path to that, but it's not a meaningful part of Tesla's volume today. And so that you look at the cost structure of what goes in an EV, and if you're able to control that supply chain, it's not only about the price you pay for lithium, it's not only the price you pay at the pack level, it's also the inventory management, it's also the excess and obsolescence. And if you control that supply chain, end to end, you're going to get a tremendous amount of benefits versus having to pay out. You're basically, when you contract with another battery vendor, you're all basically risking each other off on each side of that contract, worrying that someone's going to screw you. So you put a bunch of protections in. You either increase lead times or you increase indemnification standards. You do all these different things in the contract that could be of much larger value than the actual, price per kilowatt hour paid. So there's a huge advantage that BYD has with that. But to be honest with you, and they're probably executing, faster in terms of new models and rollout, but it's not clear beyond that they have any real sustainable advantage. Are they going to produce a lot of vehicles? Yeah. But right now I think it's they have to ship 4.2 vehicles to have the margins of one. Now that used to be 8 BYD vehicles to have the margin of one Tesla. So they have made progress, but that progress to go from, they're 4 times the amount of vehicles to get the one Tesla in margin to one, that's going to be a heavy slog for them. And they're not automated. And that's also a hard thing. And the other thing is they don't have a global software operating system, and so to ship product globally and localize it to all these different markets, that's going to take a lot of OpEx on their part. And it's going to take a lot of time for them to do. And there's no guarantee that they're going to be successful at it.
You reminded me of this article I just read, published on October 1st by UBS report. And they were talking about how Tesla and BYD is going to dominate the electric car sales, right? And the reason why, and based on their UBS research that they did, was that says here that the BYD, now specifically BYD Seal, the BYD Seal car has a 16% margin, in part because 75% of the value of the car is manufactured in-house. That accounts for about $3,700 US dollars. And because of that's what you just said, the batteries. They manufacture their own batteries in-house. They're able to produce that. That's their biggest advantage. And the Seal is about 15% cheaper to manufacture than a made in China Tesla Model 3. 15% cheaper than the Model 3 created in China. But Tesla catches up apparently based on the and have a similar profit per car because of its they don't have to outsource the software that they create. And then they say that UBS estimates a chasm between BD and legacy car makers. They're saying that there's a sustainable 25% cost advantage to BYD. So it's very bad news for Volkswagen, Toyota. This is great. This is like actual percentage numbers, 5% cost advantage.
Yeah, and they're in a low cost region, and they're in southern China, and they have some low cost geographies where they have their factories. But I'm mixed. I have a long, sordid history of working with BYD. I don't want to sound like overly down. I just was never really impressed with them as a supplier. It doesn't mean that they haven't figured some things out, obviously. And, their auto division, they have an auto division, they have a components division. I worked with their components division as well, because they're supplying a lot of components for the mobile phone, the tablet market, and smartwatch, so, they're a supplier to Apple, they're a supplier to Motorola, Google. So they have a fairly impressive components business, but they kind of went out a lot on pricing and not really on the quality side of it, but they have a lot of capability on the component side. So yeah, they do a lot of, so yeah, similar to Tesla, there's a fair amount of vertical integration, and they have they have a real battery business, up and going. They've had that on the component side for years. So anyway, they have a lot of experience there. They're going to ship a lot of cars. It's not clear if they're actually making any money in EV. I don't think they split their margins out, EV versus non-EV. It's not clear that they're making money, but when we look at their auto business in aggregate, it's pretty low margin, and you don't just grow out of that with volume. They have to structurally change what they're doing. But I'm telling you, they're going to buy Teslas. They're going to rip them apart. I know this team very well. They're going to rip them down to the component level, and they're going to figure some stuff out. And Tesla's going to be on to the next thing, and then the next thing. The things that they won't be able to copy is on the FSD side, and quite frankly, and probably some of the metallurgy things, they're going to, they have a very talented mechanical team, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to figure out that piece of it very quickly. They do their own castings at the component level in their components business. But anyway.
Man, we can take this conversation, keep going, but I've got Ryan here from the Kilowatts. Ryan, can you please come join us? You are the person to follow, by the way. Folks, if you don't know, Ryan is just so on top of, first of all, the Cybertruck and charging. I don't know how you get yourself to always in that position where you're the one following a Cybertruck and all that. So there are rumors that the Cybertruck delivery event is going to happen at the end of October. It's more than just rumors. I've actually heard from some people. No one's confirmed it, but you should know. Tell me the exact date, Ryan. When is the Cyber?
Oh man, I hate to disappoint on a couple levels because one, I don't know, and two, I've only got 5 minutes till I have to jump off this call. So thank you for the gracious introduction, but I don't know. I think we've got every reason to believe that, especially given Joe's photography of those castings, hundreds of castings down there tells me they're entering production, but because I don't have the same inside sources that you're somewhat suggesting you might be talking to, unfortunately, I don't have more.
Well, you've been following a few of these, right? So you keep fighting. What do you do? Like, do you stalk them and then you see one and you chase it down?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's a mix of things. The biggest thing I'd say is it's like a readiness to respond. Like I'm sure like a lot of people in the Bay Area see Cybertrucks, but they rarely have their phones ready, let alone are willing to drive the extra 5 minutes to go find it. So like I found one that was up by Alice's. I just partly it's choosing to go to the right places. Alice's restaurant is very popular for car culture. So just when I had my free days on the weekend, I was like, hey, let's go to Alice's, grab lunch. And as we're leaving Alice's, instead of going like the direct way home, we go back down the hill the way we came, which goes closer to Palo Alto's headquarters. And as we're going up the hill, a Cybertruck coming up the hill, and my buddy.
I think we lost you, Ryan. You back? Ryan.
Probably got a call.
What do you guys think about the Baja live stream that they did? Was that impressive? Because it was supposed to be, rough terrain. Any reaction to that? Yeah, we lost you there, Ryan. What did you think about the Baja live stream of the Cybertruck? Was it impressive to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do want to see more of the off-road testing. Like they said, they took like a difficult route down there. I've not personally driven any of the roads down to Baja, so I don't know if it's like, gravel roads or true like off-roading roads for the majority. I mean, obviously the live stream showed some like sandy areas and whatnot. And so I'm glad that they're out there testing. I mean, when I saw them in Hollister recently, part of me was excited because I've been to Hollister on the exact roads that they were on, like here in California. But seeing that they're actually getting a bit more serious is both exciting, but I'm like, okay, so what else truly off-roading have they done? So I'm excited about it, seeing that they're taking a very intentional effort now, but that does play into my curiosity of how much more testing has to be done before they can launch it.
And then while I have you here, a very smart person said that it's very clear that Tesla is going to be doing wraps or going to be highly recommending wraps because they're just keep coming out with new wraps. And oh, by the way, that smart person is Jeff. You can explain your thinking there, but what's your thinking about what is going to happen with the wraps? I mean, it's obviously something that they're promoting because they just keep coming out with, the winter camo and this kind of camo. And, we look like a truck, we look like that. The black It's just gorgeous, gorgeous. What do you think they're going to do with the wraps?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things related to the wraps. The black, for example, was posted like back in like April. That was actually someone photoshopped the black one, and then it's just getting recirculated.
That was a Photoshop? That's not real?
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. So it's really hard to tell on that one. I remember when it was initially circulating, and I tweeted about it earlier today, but that one was not real, unfortunately. And then all the other wraps, yes, those have been real. They're exciting. They're not like a super polished, well done wrap. So it makes me think that they're more of just like having fun with wraps, trying to encourage us to get into wrapping our own vehicles. And also, like, they were initially finalizing exactly how they were going to finish the metal. Is it going to be horizontal lines? Is it going to be swirls? Is it going to be, we don't do anything? So I'm not surprised that they got into wrapping. They've obviously done wrapping in China, at least for a period before. I hope that they offer wraps, but I'm also not holding out hope for that. I think that it's possible they're just trying to encourage us as consumers to wrap our cars ourselves, because otherwise there's going to be thousands of just plain canvases everywhere on the road.
Jeff had some very intelligent reasons why you think they did this. Go ahead and explain to the folks what you're thinking.
I mean, these are theories. It's not, whatever. But I think there could be a production reason and there could be a post-production reason to wrap. If you started with the post-production reason, it's, how difficult is it going to be to clean these cars, and how difficult or how easy is it going to be to scratch them? And with those two things combined, just like, your refrigerator, if you have a stainless steel appliance at home and you wipe it down the wrong way, you could actually, change the roughing and the pattern of it. And, there's a certain way to clean stainless steel appliances. You've got to, there's wipes or sprays, and then you've got to basically wipe with the grain and then, and then dry. There's a certain way to clean these things. So, I mean, maybe Tesla is going to have a tutorial on that. I don't know. But I think one of the things is just, keep, post-production and keeping the vehicle clean, keeping it maintained, and keeping it kind of scratch-free. That may be a reason. And then, I mean, none of us know what's happening right now in the factory. I just know from my experience, when you're trying to align anything that's bare stainless or bare aluminum, is going to show scratches in the factory very easy, number one, and it's going to scratch in the factory. And then it's also going to show, at any interface that, to glass or, if it's hinged to hinge on metal, it's going to be difficult to align those things, and your tolerance accumulators change based on the surface finish, based on the color. Like, for example, black high gloss is one of the worst. Black matte is one of the best for hiding defects. So it's a theory. I don't know. I don't know what kind of yields they're having in production right now. I'd have to imagine the fact that I'm always an advocate of, like, listen to what Elon says, because he doesn't really bullshit around when he says stuff. And when he says, like, it's going to be really important, for the look of this product to have this 10 micron accuracy, that's difficult to do from an assembly tolerance perspective. And people get confused on this. They think of like machining tolerances versus assembly tolerances, and they're different. Yes, I have no doubt that Tesla can machine stainless, to the thousandths of an inch. I don't have any doubt that they can do that. But, in terms of like putting all these things together, having them perfectly aligned, I think there's risk. So how do you deal with some of that risk? You have a tolerance accumulator. What's a tolerance accumulator? It could be a wrap post-production in the factory. I don't know. If I were designing a Cybertruck manufacturing process, it wouldn't have a wrapping operation in it unless I knew I would have huge uptake and I can do it with high margins.
Wait, are you
And
suggesting it's going to come out with your choice of wrap? Because people said there's no way that Tesla's going to do the wrapping. They're just going to recommend other vendors.
yeah, so that's my default is I don't believe this would be something that Tesla, when they were designing the Cybertruck process a couple of years ago, that they would want to have this. There's no way in my mind that I think they would want to have this. The question is, is it time to go now? And the yields are really poor. at the assembly level. I'm just putting out a hypothetical. I don't know the answer to that, but it's reasonable to believe that this is a pretty difficult thing to have it come together and have it have really super tight tolerances and small gaps so that when you see that visual, you know, with a stainless finish, there's no imperfections in terms of gaps, in terms of offsets, in terms of steps. The gap is different. Gap is kind of on the X plane, step is on the Z plane, gap is on the X and the Y plane, or offsets are on the Y plane, then steps in the Z plane. So it's just a theory. But again, I think post-production, there's some value in them. And then I think pre-production before delivery to customers, the question is if they have a major yield issue building stainless Cybertrucks, would a wrapping operation help them from a yield perspective and help deal with those units that wouldn't have been shippable, that would have to be torn down and rebuilt? Or can they manually adjust these things in the factory? I don't know. But anyway, I'm pontificating. I don't know the answer to that. I will tell people, I would just give people a quick 30-second perspective. Over the last 10 years, if you've ever gone to the store to buy a smartphone and your favorite color is out of stock and it's been out of stock for like 2 months, there's a reason for that. And the reason is that vendor or supplier got surprised in the manufacturing process with their ability to build it, or that variant is selling out much faster than they originally planned for. But a lot of times, OEMs get surprised at launch with the tolerances and the difficulties of either decorating or assembling various different colors.
Xander, you've got reservations for 2 Cybertrucks. What do you guys guess is what percentage of people will wrap their Cybertruck, and what percentage will just keep it the way it is? My guess is that the vast majority will keep it the way it is. 70%, 30% will wrap, versus the opposite of what some people are telling me. What's your guess? What are you going to do, Xander?
I've never been big on wrapping stuff. I like the stainless look. That's like I love glass and steel and want an ultra modern house. So if I were to put a percentage on it, yeah, maybe a third. I think that's a reasonable guess. Maybe 50%, but it seems like an additional expense well, okay, let's talk in the beginning. You're going to have all the ultra fans because that's who reserved right off, right as soon as it was announced. So that percentage may be higher. I would agree with that line of thinking.
I mean, you definitely don't want to have the same truck everywhere, right? It's going to be like the white Tesla.
Why not? It's the white Tesla or the black Tesla. They're all the same.
That's my point. You don't want that, do you? Like,
I don't care.
The
want
reason
mine.
why they do the wrap for the Tesla is because they want to protect it, right? That's part of one of the reasons. You don't necessarily need to do that with this one. So it's not for protection, it's just for looks, right?
Yeah, but it's not like PPF, so that's a lot more expensive. So the wrap is less expensive. I think a lot of people like individuality, but at the same time, it's going to be different than every other vehicle on the road. So you don't care if there's another Cybertruck, but it's definitely you want it to stand out from everyone else.
Okay, so there was this very recent tweet that came out this morning. I think it was a translator from Chinese. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? And they're talking about projections of how many Cybertrucks they're expecting. I'm trying to find it right now. Jeff, do you know what I'm talking about? Is this in line with what your projections are?
I didn't see the.
What?
Oh, yeah, I think I saw that. It was a couple hundred, this year, and then
Right.
Over 100,000 in 24, I think.
Yeah.
And then like 250, 240, 250 the following year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably right. I mean, Tesla's going to have a very good understanding of the order cancellation rate as they start delivering these things in volume. Because what's going to happen is, they're going to tell people, hey, your number's up. Are you taking delivery? Yes or no? And they're going to see how many new orders are coming in as well. And they're going to have a pretty good idea of where they're at. Because again, there's a lot of mysteries with this product. Now, I'm in the camp, I'm bullish, but I go back to my rule, trust, what when Elon says that this is going to be the best Tesla they've ever made. I mean, the guy knows Teslas. So I think we're going to get surprised positively on the specs. I think it's going to blow us away on what matters. And I think there's going to be some surprises as well. I think, again, we see these things, we see them driving in the streets, but there's this big mystery around like, what did they do? How do they perform? What does it feel to drive one? I'm hearing it's actually pretty luxurious when you're inside of it. It's pretty quiet. What are all these things? Is it going to be meaningfully different than, driving a standard pickup truck? Anyway, I think that Tesla's going to have a very good idea of the order cancellation rate when they start getting these things shipped out. And then you start seeing the real reviews and you start seeing people talk about it. This thing's going to be the most YouTubed, videoed thing on X. You're going to see it everywhere, and you're going to see now the real experience from real people using it, because we don't have that. It's just Tesla employees right now, and they're not going to say anything to us. They're under NDA, and nor should they. So that's going to be that's what's going to drive the production capacity piece of it. Because what Tesla can do is probably within 6 to 9 months, I would say they could double their capacity on Cybertruck, probably closer to 9 months. But that's probably how long it would take for them to double their capacity. So we don't know what original capacity they've installed. We just know that, it's somewhere maybe between 250. But yeah, it would probably, if they get a big surprise on the order side of it, and and they see the order volume is sustained, they'll have to go in and increase capacity, and that'll take some period of time. Again, it's going to take them. The first thing you do when you're ramping a product is you're trying to get your supply base and you're trying to get your factory to peak run rate. So Tesla's on a number right now. They're on a number. They've designed this supply. Let's say that the number is 250K annualized. What they're trying to do right now is get every tool at every supplier from its 250K annualized run rate. Because once you can get at that run rate, and then once you're there, now you're giving the supplier time to get their yields up, get their process time down, and that'll get their cost down. You want to get the most number of components in your factory at the lowest cost possible. So that first quarter of production is probably going to be the highest cost Cybertruck they'll ever build. Probably the first, and then the second, followed by the second quarter. And it'll probably take them about 6 to 9 months, probably, to get the peak run rate.
Okay, well, let's break that down. So this estimate came from Ming Chi, and I saw it from Yaman's tweet and translated to English. There was some sort of survey. I don't know where it came from, but he said 100 to 2023. Okay. Then he said 100 to 100,000, 120,000 in 2024. So you just said it takes 9 months. And so to get to 120,000, it's either like what, 10,000 run rate per month. And so you said it takes 9 months, but they also
8,000,
said,
yeah.
but they also said that the Cybertruck is designed for manufacturing. So I can see it very slow at the beginning, and of course, but it'll be faster at the end. So what's your expectation again? You think by 9 months, and then they'll shoot up to, like, what's your guess for production per week or production per month?
Yeah, I mean, I think they could, at the midpoint of next year, maybe they can be at, 1 to 2K per week. But I think it's going to take them a couple months more. Let's say if their peak, let's say they design the supply chain and factories to 250K annualized, that's about 2K. Sorry, it's about 20K per month. Okay, 21K per month. So it's going to take them, and that's about 5K a week. I would say that's going to take them to the better part of 9 months to get to that. Maybe even a bit longer. We'll see. It all depends how. To me, this is down to engineering. It's not that they didn't efficiently design. It's not like they didn't really reduce the number of components. That's why this will be a great vehicle to build. I agree with all that. The question is, what are the issues? What are the engineering issues that they're up against now? What are the yield issues that are well below plan? That's what's going to, take time. And then what about the 4680? Everybody thinks this is in unlimited supply. I don't think that's the case. And I don't think we know the answer to that. And I think by the way, if the 4680 issue was solved, I think you'd hear Tesla crowing about it. And I don't hear them saying anything about it. And in fact, I see them, being somewhat, trying to avoid that, especially on calls when the question comes up. And you're getting kind of vague things like, we're producing the most amount we've ever done before, or we're this many times better than we were a couple months ago. The question is like, do you have unlimited supply versus your internal demand need for 4680s? And when are you going to get to that? So those are the things that come to mind of like, what would it take for Cybertruck to get to its peak run rate? I think it's going to be, is there any unique mechanical, any unique issues that are new to Cybertruck that Tesla hasn't done before? And then second, it's going to be the 4680. And third, is there going to be any problems with the 48 volt architecture? I don't think so from a supply perspective, but they may be dealing with some yield issues in the factory. But I think that's probably a distant third on my list in terms of risk. I think it's going to be something mechanically unique with the Cybertruck and the 4680 supercell are the two things that would say, like, what is it going to take for Tesla to get to its peak run rate?
Yeah, I've got a really fun question. I don't know if anybody's actually asked this question before. It's going to wrap everything we just talked about today. Okay. So the Cybertruck, let's assume that is very successful. Who's going to be able to copy it? Would they copy it? Right? Would a legacy automaker be able to copy a Cybertruck, just the form factor, perhaps, not all the, bizwang technology that's going to be inside of it? What about the Asian manufacturers, the Chinese car companies? Can they create a Cybertruck? But why would they? Because currently they can't necessarily sell it in the US, which is the biggest market share for trucks in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, could this be a market that is owned by Tesla forever, 2030 and beyond? Nobody's going to be able to copy this. Everybody. There was a comment this morning. Was it one of the analysts said that, oh, everything that Tesla's doing can easily be copied by others. It's just a matter of time. Well, the question is always, well, how much more time? So anyways, what do you guys think? Is that something that anybody could actually copy, technology wise, form factor wise, the steel roll, and then of course the factories to be able to produce this, and then the business model, right? Who's going to buy it from them?
It depends what you define as copying, like in terms of what I believe what the Cybertruck will be is going to be much more than how it looks. It's going to be the performance, the towing capability, the range, and the acceleration performance, the truck features that it's going to be able to do. So I think there's going to be the whole package. But yeah, could somebody do something that kind of looks like it? This happens a lot. If the form, I think everybody's kind of standing by and they're like, because this is like Tesla's brainchild. Nobody knows if this form factor is going to catch on with the broader public. Okay. There's anecdotal information. There's, what do you call amateur like spreadsheets that are tracking orders that say there's a ton of orders for these things, but it's $100, it's cancelable, it's whatever. So I think a lot of people are like, is this thing, if it's going to catch on? I mean, I think Tesla's even doing that as well. That's why Elon said, like, hey, if this catches on, we're going to add more capacity. If it doesn't, then maybe we'll do a more traditional looking, truck type. Like, I think they're committed to the category in like solving electrification for trucks and getting the right performance that truck owners want and need, but they don't know if the form factor is going to work. I think a lot of us are like, hell yeah, it's going to work. But, I think that's what, but I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of copying, it's got to be like the whole thing. I think the whole thing's going to be difficult to copy, the looks and the performance. That's what, makes Tesla. If they could have copied a Model 3 and Model Y and shipped it globally, Model 3 shipped 6 years ago, Model Y shipped 3 years ago. There still isn't a competitor from GM, Ford, Stellantis, or even any of the Chinese competitors that can ship globally that can compete with the Model 3 or Y. So this would probably take them a little bit longer, I think, to figure out, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I've asked this question a few times and I've not got a satisfying answer. Like, why is Tesla even doing a truck? Okay. Because if you compare it to the compact, the sedan, it's like the truck market globally is actually not that big. Am I wrong? Like,
well, the US, that's big.
US, it is big. But yeah, but if you're trying to, accelerate the sustainable energy. Why would you? It's almost like, the S and the Roadster, but it came a little late. You're diverting attention to something that it's going to be a big market here. I'm not saying it's going to be massive, but comparatively to the other market shares, I'm trying to find my chart that I've been looking at. And when I looked at it last time, I was shocked at how small it was comparatively to the compact car and the sedan and the SUV market.
I mean, here's the thing with EVs, Elon and the Tesla team are trying to show that there isn't some fundamental reason why, as a consumer, you should be, they want to solve for every category so that there's no barriers to EVs being the entire fleet for transportation. So you got to solve for truck, you got to solve for transit vans, you got to solve for, sub 30,000, sub $20,000 vehicles. Like, you've got to solve for all these things. The question of like what order you take in it. I don't know why the Cybertruck came before. I think I probably know the answer. The reason the Cybertruck came before the model, whatever you want to call it, the Model 2, is battery supply. And, that's probably the reason, it came before that. But David's got a question.
I just have a comment. Thank you always for all your forums. The truck is the bread and butter of we used to call the big three in the United States. Profit for the F-150, it's probably half of Ford's profit. I don't know the figures. General Motors, even the Ram truck. So this strikes at the heart of those industries. They don't have to take all the market share, but they can take enough to make less profit. These trucks are gas guzzlers. The trucks that Tesla will be making, of course, will be efficient. I think people will be trading in their Model X's or not buying Model X's and use the Cybertruck. It has a broad appeal among all categories. It's not exactly the best work truck. You can't work from the side of the bed. It's interesting. There's no ramp right now. So it has a crossover appeal. It is not just a truck, and it strikes at the heart of their main competitors.
Yeah, agreed. I would have never, there's nothing in my background or purchasing history or pattern that would have ever bought a pickup truck, but I'm going to buy a Cybertruck. And I think there's a lot of people like that. And it could be, for its look. It could be, for a number of reasons. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to cross over. It's not going to be but I think it's going to take a huge divot out of the truck category. I think it's going to make a huge impact and dent, but I think it's going to kind of create its own kind of like cyber category. If this works and this whole like stainless industrial angular look works, then you're going to see Tesla make other cars like it, as long as they can simplify manufacturing, as long as it keeps them or accelerates them on the goal to, sustainable transportation. I could see them doing more of this, because that paint shop, a paint shop is about $1 billion of CapEx to install in a factory. That's a lot of CapEx, and that has to be amortized over multiple years. It's a huge process of cleaning, the vehicle prior and prepping. It's a lot of process time. There's a lot of fallout. And, if you could avoid that with this look and then not have any major downstream implications, deleting that operation from the manufacturing process would have huge implications.
I mean, Ford, and everything you say is true. Ford needs to bring out the midsize truck right now, from the ground up. EV midsize truck. That is a market that's right now left open to them. Look, they couldn't even compete against the Toyota Tacoma. Look at how Tacoma dominates, and they're making midsize pickups that they're afraid to cannibalize anything of the F-150. And that fear doesn't allow them to make the best products. I own Ford products. I don't hate them, but have to come from a place of innovation and quality control.
Yeah, they can't bring anything out until they fundamentally, they lose $60,000 per vehicle. And, they're going to have to fundamentally redesign how they're doing EVs, to me, before they start adding models to the mix.
Won't it take years to figure out whether Cybertruck is disrupting the F-150, since, you have such a backlog, allegedly, of Tesla fans and people who like the truck? That seems to be conquering and acquiring new buyers like yourself and myself, I've always liked trucks and always wanted one, but never decided to go for it until the Cybertruck. So I think you're going to see a lot of that in the beginning. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll take some time, but I don't think it's going to take years. I think inside of a year, you're going to know. I think inside of maybe 6 months, you're going to know, if these things are, what the order intake rate is. They're going to know, pretty quickly. Because what people are going to do is like, they're going to see it and like, oh man, I wish I would have ordered one. They're going to go order one. Then you're going to see them. The other thing you're going to see is you're going to see them on the market for sale. Someone's going to buy one and put it up for sale. And if it's going for, double and triple the cost, well, then you're going to know, right? You're going to know the supply demand, and you're going to know the price elasticity of it pretty quickly.
The other thing, Xander, is, in my state, there's $1.50 a gallon, just tax, mostly carbon tax. Not going to go into politics, but our regular gas is $5 a gallon, the cheapest. And there's all, trucks. I drive 2 old Ford trucks and I need them for work and I like them. And my clients, pay for part of that gas. All of us who drive trucks, I go to the gas pump and put 150 of gas in a 35-gallon tank. Just from that aspect alone, we need a more reasonable option that makes more sense.
Yeah, agreed. Christian, welcome.
Hey guys.
What's up, Christian?
Hey, you want me to say?
Well, usually when you say hello to someone, usually they say something back.
Hey, Jeff. No, so I don't know what you guys were talking about. I'll just give you a quick overall the way I'm thinking about Tesla right now, the stock. So, we have earnings coming up, I guess in a couple of weeks. The deliveries were, so-so. There's nothing really earth-shattering happening other than, for the market, right, for the stock. I think, and I've been wrestling with this. I think what's happening is with the strike, that going in there, with the point of credit sale coming in next year, you got Cybertruck ready to go, even though it's late. You have, I think, kind of a put in Tesla stock. You know how we talk about the Fed put? Well, I think we have like a Tesla stock put, and I think it's with Tesla bought, even if it's like a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, FSD, a licensing deal could hit anytime. So even though earnings aren't exploding, they're, basically flat year over year. And I don't know what next year looks like really, unless something out of the blue happens. I think that's enough for optimistic scenario to be fine and I'd hire. So that's the way I'm looking at it. These things are in place now. I don't think Tesla stock is now trading on a margin story anymore. I think that's what was the first, from the 50 billion to the $1 trillion market cap was, oh my God, look at these amazing margins. Look at the 50, 60, 70% growth on units. I think all that is still important, but I think it's to a lesser degree now as we get into this AI age and as Tesla, we've been talking about it, as Tesla, more videos come out about the bot. I think investors see that. And even though you might not get an stabilization in the stock price because of these, game-changing things that people want to own the company, even if the earnings aren't accelerating, and you could still get a 60, 70, 80 multiple, kind of where we're trading now on flat earnings. So that's my high-level thoughts. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening. But yeah, I think that the Tesla put is in play.
I can't stop laughing, Christian. Oh my God. We've had fiery debates for the last 2 years because that is exactly what Christian, Xander, me saying, and you are like, no, it's all about earnings. It's all about next quarter. You have turned into a long-term bull.
That's where it was. That earnings was the driver, but now earnings are flatlined, and now we've moved to the second part. So I hear what you're saying, but
when I met you,
I've been pretty consistent on it.
Yeah.
I've been pretty consistent.
Okay. No, when I met you, you were a bull for Tesla because you kept calling Tesla an earnings machine, right? We quoted you. We love that term, an earnings machine. Then, of course, they got hit last year. You turned into a bear. You were pretty upset with Tesla because they, price cuts. They're sacrificing. You did not like the volume versus price debate that we had. And you just kept thinking, well, there's no way the Tesla stock's going to rise. Now you've started to get infected with the bot story. I know that got you very excited. You see that one clearly, much more clearly than the robotaxi story. And that got you turned around. But it's just great. It's great to hear you say the things you're saying now. I like bullish Christian. I love bullish Christian.
No, I love it, Herbert. You're right. And we've been on the show over the last few months. And I posted this out. My thinking on Tesla has changed. It's more of a patient, long-term investor, right? We had that huge rise, and now I'm more in your camp. Let the story play out. I'm not really where Gary Black is anymore. I debated him a little bit with it, going back and forth. Gary, we love Gary, but he is who he is. I am very excited about the bot. You got that right. I'm very excited, super excited about that. And I'm willing now. I have my position. I add on any weakness, but I can now be patient with it because it's not dominating my entire portfolio. So even if Tesla stock kind of meanders, I have other things going on. So I can be patient with it, and I'm in a much better place with the stock. And I think Elon's doing great. I love what he's doing, with X, and I
Okay,
think the future's bright.
I need to ask you then, what has changed, right? Because 2 years ago, not only did we have all these stories that we're telling now, long-term, everything of that, very risk-adjusted, but it's also had the earnings. Just because the earnings disappear for a year because of the macro, dude, that's why it went away. Wait until the macro reverses. The earnings will come skyrocketing back. They will be able to sell this car. People will just die to buy the car. At that point, they'll have the cost so low that they can get the margins back up without having going back to the same price it was a year ago. I guess I just want to ask you, press you a little bit, because you're the only guy I can press on this.
Yes.
What has changed? Why didn't you have this view 2 years ago when I met you? Why couldn't you understand that view then? Why does it now?
I had a view 2 years ago. So the view kind of changed when, I don't know the exact time period. So I agree with you. I hope you're right on the margin story. Jeff talks about it all the time, and I listen to it, and I think he's great. I just don't have enough confidence that the margins are going to get kind of back. They might improve, but with them keep lowering price of the car, to me, that's less of a story now, because you would have to drop COGS so much, because they keep dropping price that it's only matching it. So I don't think margins get back, anytime soon into those 20s or mid 20s. I just can't see it unless you get some of this software stuff with the FSD. If you're just doing it based on the metal, I just don't see that happening. So, I'm comfortable now with what Elon's doing with the unit growth story, because now Wall Street has gotten accustomed to it. But before they were accustomed to it, that's why the stock, with other reasons, dropped 75%. That was a vicious drawdown. So if you had a lot of capital and you drew down, 75% on a huge amount of money, that is not a good position to be in. So, especially if you didn't have a lot of money to buy, so you're just kind of sitting there like a lame duck. So that was more my theory on that. But I agree with you. So, we're in a good position. I think, like I said, nothing's really changed over on the last few months. A Tesla bot has really excited me. That video excited me. I see major progress, and I think my timeline on that has moved up. And again, I think there's a put in the stock on the FSD licensing, the Tesla bot getting better, and then the union being on strike. Investors are seeing, wait a minute, Tesla's still grinding away. They're still growing units, even though the earnings or the margins aren't there. These guys can't even make electric cars. They still got dominant market share in the US. They're still doing very well in China. We're about to expand. We're still scaling Austin. We're still scaling Berlin. We're about to do, eventually Mexico. So the growth story's still there. There's a lot of exciting things coming with the AI, which I think will support the valuation. And I'm excited. So, and, we love talking about it.
I love it, Christian. Now that you're back, we're going to have to, we're all going to be the same kind of long-term bull now. It's not going to be as fun. But hey, is that David Katz? Is that David? The David I know, but I didn't recognize you because of that dog nose picture. Is that you? Come on up.
You just spoke.
Well, can he? Oh, okay, I missed that part. Okay, I didn't recognize him. That was David. Yes, I know that. It's been forever. I haven't talked to you for like a year for some reason. Okay, welcome.
Yeah.
I didn't even recognize your voice. See that? Oh my gosh. So what do you think about what Christian's saying? Is that something that's you believe in as well? But I think if we can convince Christian, if he can switch like this, it's like a precursor to other people's thinking. He mentioned that the union issue that the big three are fighting, that is now seeping into everybody's minds that they are in trouble and that Tesla is the winner.
Well, this is what Christian's doing. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't think this came out in the last commentary. You're looking at how the market responds to news, and then you're deciding, you're giving what the market is you're taking what the market is giving you. So Wall Street has reduced their EPS estimates multiple times on Tesla. Analyst notes came out today. Two of them came downgraded the price target, and the stock is either stable or goes up. And so what your point is like the market's not reacting to that anymore. The market's reacting to the put that could be in the stock, which are the new vehicles coming out. It could be an FSD license deal. It could be a number of different things. That's what the market's more reacting to now. It's not reacting to a 4-cent change in earnings for next year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Jeff. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yep. 100%. Well stated.
Yeah. So that's what's happening with the price action with the stock now. So, and technically it's forming a nice base. Technically it's in a good spot. It's got to get, I always like to look at the fundamental. I always like to spend 80% of my time plus on the fundamentals and then look at the technicals, because I'm not a big fan of like, oh, let's look at the SR flip zone and let's, buy some here and flip it there. I mean, if you want to trade like you can do that around the edges, but if you're kind of a longer term buy and hold type person, there's some value in understanding the technicals. So 280 to 290 is a 2-year trend line that Tesla's got to break to get out of a downtrend. And if it can meaningfully break and close above that on multiple sessions, and we get through earnings and we don't have a major breakdown, well then technically it's got other levels above that. It's gotten, or then it goes to like, I think 306, 314, 321. Like it's got all these smaller resistance levels above it. And then it could really take off. So yeah, Tesla's not responding, to this news like it used to before. Look how it's responding to the price cuts. We have all this hemming and hawing on Twitter. And by the way, people aren't doing, I'm not gonna recreate our video that we shot, Herbert. People should go look at the video that was released on Monday where we talk about, surprise for Tesla. I'm not going to recreate it on this call here, but I would say 98% of people are reading posts from people and they're not doing the math behind these price changes. And, so we'll see what happens. I think Q3 is going to be a little messy with the shutdowns and with the fact that they had a lot of Q2 inventory cars they shipped. By the way, this is the other thing, and I saw this in the Jeffries note today. I mean, I would say like 99% of Wall Street, literally, they need to go to supply chain school or they need to hire people. That was a laughable comment from Jeffries on inventory. There's only a 4.9K turnover in inventory because, they built 4K and they shipped 435. That's not how inventory actually works. And what happened in that quarter, and none of us know because we're not on the inside of Tesla, but there is some data out there that actually tells you what happened. And number one, they told Deutsche Bank that half of their inventory is transit. Why is that important? I think people only think like 10 or 20K of inventory is in transit. Tesla's telling you 40, 50, 60K of it is in transit. That's a big deal because that inventory wasn't available for sale. And if it's not available for sale, that means you have stockouts, you have locations that may not have enough supply. So their real days of inventory in terms of what's sellable is closer to 8 days, which basically means they're in stockout mode in a lot of different locations. And people can't buy a Tesla if they wanted to buy a Tesla. That's point one. Point two is, what did they do in September? They pre-built the Model 3 Plus. So that is going to be fresh, brand new inventory that couldn't be sold. So that's in that. If you think inventory is at 96K, it's got a brand new, probably 30 to 50,000 Model 3 Pluses in that inventory. And remember what we said, half of that 100K inventory wasn't available for sale and it was in transit, meaning it was going to a location to be available for sale, or it had an order tied to it. What does that tell you? That tells you that 100K inventory it's turning, it's moving. So I think there's going to be a fairly big surprise. I think what's going to happen is they're going to get approval to ship the Model 3 Plus in October in all these geographies, including China. And they're going to actually I think they have an inventory problem, and they're going to have a massive, Q4 production quarter to catch up. And that's why I think they actually moved. Say, well, why did they lower prices then? Well, they have to, if you're running an operation like that, they have to give themselves enough certainty to say that they could probably sell somewhere on the order of 500 to 520K cars. And when you put your operation in that position, and then you have a 1 or 2 day issue, you may have issues where supply's lumpy coming in or whatever, where you may knock off a production day here or there, or a sales day at the end of the quarter for whatever reason. You want to put yourself in a position. You don't, if you're trying to ship 480, you don't aim your supply chain at 480. You aim at much higher, and then you try to manage it, down at the end. So why did I say all that? The reason I said all that is because, when you're trying to understand what's happening with the inventory story and you're seeing these analyst notes, most of the analysts, if not all of them, they don't do the COGS piece of it any justice, and they don't do the inventory piece of it any justice. And if you're using that as your reasons to downgrade your price target, you're really not understanding what's going on with Tesla.
Nice, Jeff. Fantastic. That was good. Yeah, I was going to say that the supply chain expertise, we're so very fortunate we have you to help us do that. I don't know if we need those investment analysts to do that. By the time they bring one on board, the company would have moved on to beyond cars into energy and bots, if I'm being very optimistic. Let's ask Luke to come on up. Anybody else have any questions? Raise your hands.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
You can hear me okay? Good. Yeah, I live up in Canada, and one of the things that I always tell everybody is it's stainless steel and it's not going to rust. Every car I've owned up here, you keep for a long time. I do. And others like to kind of roll their cars over every 5 years and buy a new one on lease or something. But I think there's a massive market for cars that last a long time, which pretty much anything that Tesla is making that's going to be a robotaxi is designed to last. And that's what I think a lot of people forget about. And that's going to become a huge thing. It'll probably take 10, 15, 20 years before people really comprehend how big that is, because that's how long, you can sometimes get that amount of time out of an existing vehicle. But usually, like my mechanic, I have a Honda CRV that I'm just bought as an old piece of junk, and it's literally falling apart. Like just, the rust in Canada in the northern climates, as soon as you have salt on the roads, just annihilates vehicles, which almost all of Tesla's vehicles don't have that problem as much. That was one thing I keep on letting people know. It's like, hey, remember this?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Luke. Any other questions or comments for the group?
From myself or others?
No, for you. Is there any other questions?
Yeah. The other thing I always think about is, when you have families, I know Elon's super big on families. These are kind of, crossovers in disguise. A lot of people probably will be buying them. So there's going to be even more of a market, I think, outside of the pickup truck. I don't know how many of you guys live in Canada, but pickup trucks are everywhere. And a lot of them are just being driven as family vehicles. Guys use them to commute to their job site or, drive their families around, go camping. And this is kind of like going to hit that market really well, I think.
Are you able to order a Cybertruck in Canada?
Yeah, I was told by the local Tesla dealer that we probably, generally, for instance, when the Model Y came out, it took about 18 months before we actually started getting them. But yes, I have my order. And so,
so we'll let you put an order in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually originally from Vancouver, Canada. And so I've been, as many people know, big advocate for Tesla since 2012.
Yeah.
And I've just been telling my whole family, right? Everything about Tesla. They ignored me. They didn't give a crap about it. They thought it was just an interesting hobby of mine. And then when the Cybertruck presentation came out, that's when one of my brothers ordered one. And that's when he started to invest. And then he put all of his money in it as well. So he's become an all-in investor because of the Cybertruck. That was his reasoning. And yeah, I mean, Canada, it's a perfect, if Cybertruck's going to succeed, it's going to, in North America, that will be where it's going to go.
Yeah. And you got that huge, 200 kilowatt battery. I think is that the size in the tri-motor?
We don't know.
tri-motor?
No, that was the Hummer.
Right. But if it's got an
And
800 miles,
you're-
right? Like is the tri-motor?
No, it's. I hear we're going to be less than 400. Jeff, have you heard any rumors on the battery capacity?
No, I mean, we don't know any of this stuff. So, I mean, if it's be anything would be a rumor. So we will see. No idea. Be a surprise. Okay. Thank you, Luke. I appreciate your
You're welcome.
comments. Eddie?
So first, Jeff, I completely agree with what you had to say about advertisement, and I hate to bring this stuff up, but I agree that we all live in a bubble, but I think we all have to remember how we all got into Tesla. My question to you, Jeff, is at what point do you think Tesla has to go down that path of educating people? Let's say they start building 5 million cars a year. I don't see how word of mouth could scale to that production level. And I think I agree with what they're doing today with cutting prices for their production. But when we get to 5 and 10 million, I mean, I don't understand. I don't know if like robo-taxi will be enough, that sort of stuff, or it'll be there by then to sell all the volume that we'll have by then.
Yeah. And then it's also like what kind of advertising, because it's like, it's not an NFL sponsorship. It's not a, something like that. It's not just spraying money all over TV. A lot of people that are into Tesla don't even watch TV or even into these things. But, the answer is I'm not a marketing executive. So I know what I know and I know what I don't know. But I am an engineer. I am into like, let's get some data and let's try to understand, let's try to understand the data. That's all I'm saying. But I knowing how Tesla thinks and how Elon thinks, and I would quite frankly be in a similar boat of like, if I have $1 of OpEx and I could put $1 of OpEx into buying engineers and buying piece parts, so I can take the cost of the car down or the cost of the item down versus buying advertising, and I don't know the return on the advertising. I do know if I put somebody on the headlight assembly, I know that they're going to figure out how to take cost out of it. So I want 10% out of this. They're going to come back to me with options for how to take 10% out of that assembly. If I take that money and I put it in advertising, I don't know what the return is going to be unless I actually test it and try it. And it's not even a given that return is going to be linear over time. But if I do put that money into taking the price of the car down, I do know what my return is going to be over the lifetime of the car. So that's how I think he's thinking. I also believe he's thinking that $1 of that spend, that below gross margin spend can also go into, making a bot, making a dojo. So I think it's not a zero-sum game. They have a lot of cash. They don't have to burn through it all in one quarter. So I understand all that, but it's a tricky thing. And that's why I see both sides of this, but I'm not in the camp of like, don't ever get data and don't ever understand if it actually helps you or not. I think people in that camp, I think there's kind of a little bit of like that feels a little cultish to me. What feels like more normal to me is like, go get some data and try to understand it. But I don't think it's a reason. But by the way, I don't think Tesla has a demand problem. I don't think there's data. I was like, why are they cutting price? They're cutting price because the marginal cost of a vehicle is a lot more than it was a year ago. It's many thousands of dollars more than it was a year ago. By the way, when the rates on a vehicle, like for example, this year they've gone from if you have a 650 or higher credit score, they've gone from like 5.5% to like 7.5 or 8% on a vehicle. That adds like $100 or more your monthly payment. Like, oh, it's $100. So what? Okay. Over a 70-month or a 60-month car note, that's thousands of dollars. And that's where the math is coming from for Tesla and why they're doing what they're doing. So I kind of went all over the place there, but yeah, just give me a couple of words.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. So just quickly.
Hey, Eddie, I just wanted to say something real quick before I forget. Oh, go ahead, Eddie. Go ahead.
Part of the argument that I've heard is that people are buying the comparables, right? Like the Audis, the Mercedes, and even the Camry and the Accords. And I think that's part of the data that the people that pro advertisement are bringing up is that if these people knew about, the quality of the Tesla and the advantages that you get in a Tesla, they would not do that.
Well, here's the all the data I look at is in the 30 to 40,000. If Tesla is available in that region, in the price range that Teslas are sold at, the comparables don't sell any more than Teslas. Tesla outsells them. So I actually think we're actually confused, and we're seeing and looking at bad information, or we're interpreting it the wrong way. But I don't know of a price tier that Tesla competes in where they don't sell more cars than everybody else in that tier.
Yeah. No, I don't. What, say again, Jeff?
Does BMW or Mercedes or any vehicle brand outsell Tesla in a price tier that Tesla competes in?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a BMW 3 Series at 27,000 or $399 a month on a lease, yeah, that's a different thing. But I think if they're competing at a like for like price point with Tesla, I don't know that. But by the way, Tesla has a distribution. This is what other people understand with Tesla. It's not available everywhere that BMW, Mercedes, and all these other cars are available in. Everybody thinks that everybody just buys cars in the US and China. There's all these geos that EVs and Teslas have not expanded to yet. But anyway, go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I loved Eddie's question. I loved your response, and I'm on board with everything, but I'm just taking a logical view of it again. I'm just going to state this. You could drive the cost of the car down. You could use all the money to do that. And I get that from a first principles perspective, but we're also living in a capitalistic society, right? If you believe, and this is just anecdotal information, I've done polls, I've heard numerous people talk about that people don't even know Tesla exists, the brand exists. If you keep reducing cost on the car and make it more compelling and make it more valuable, but if there's a marginal population, or a good sized population that doesn't know that your product, which you've drove down the cost, that has great value, even exists, they're not going to be able to buy it. So at some point, to Eddie's point, once you start getting at these $2, $3, $4, $5 million volumes, 5 million units per year volumes, at some point, I think you do have to kind of get your brand out to a bigger audience. Now, I agree with you, you want data, but if you don't actually do anything to collect data, which it doesn't seem like Tesla, maybe they are, but we don't know about it, how do you get the data? You actually have to try something. You actually have to try some type of, not a YouTube, an ad on Google, like an actual advertising campaign. Again, I'm not the expert, but you have to do something to see what the results are. And I agree with you. I don't think Tesla has a demand problem, but we do know they had a demand problem at a certain price point, because we have reduced price of the car down tremendously. So the clearing price has definitely come down a lot to get to match the demand and the supply. So at some point, unless you want to erode all the profits and all the margins because you're playing for the FSD play, you have a problem. So you might have to continue to knock the cogs down, but you might have to do a double strategy, right? Play offense and defense. Maybe go to the demand side and say, hey, I don't think we have a major demand problem, but I think we have an incremental demand problem, because our cars are so valuable. And plus now we got an IRA credit, a point of sale $7,500 on most of our models, or for all of the models. Why is our cars not selling a little bit better? So let's get a little first principles thinking. Let's get a little bit, thinking about how could we get this car in front of more eyeballs? Because if we could get this car in front of 10 million people in the country that don't know it exists right now, or the brand exists right now, or knows about it very little, we can maybe convert 10% of 10 million into a customer. And that would literally be 1 million of sales. So I don't know. That's how I would think about it. So I don't disagree with anything, but I think the demand side needs to take a little bit more as we grow. And I think that advertising will eventually play a role. So just from a high level.
Yeah. Like you said, I'm not opposed to getting data. That's what I'm saying. This turns into like, I don't know, like a religious debate or something. It's not. It's like you're either on the side of, getting data and understanding it or not. I do have issue with like it just being prescribed as like, well, this is definitely a solution. Like, well, I don't know. It's probably have to get some data, to understand that. It's complicated, but yeah. I mean, I think
Seth, can I ask one question? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm using your expertise. You're in the car market. Other car makers, they advertise like crazy. Now, I'm not saying it's effective, but they keep doing it. So it must work at some level. What is I'm not saying it's efficient, but they advertise their commercials. Do you have any idea of what like a traditional car maker's convert rate is on an advertisement, or do they convert anybody, or do they just advertise for fun just to burn money and they don't care if they actually get any customers? Because I'm sure they look at the data, and if the data was terrible, that none of their ads were working to convert customers, wouldn't they stop it?
Well, I think they flex their ad spend up and down. And the question is like, and this is where you can get into a little bit of a philosophical debate. You've heard of that red ocean, blue ocean mentality of like, are they just all like competing with each other with similar cars? Like, is a BMW 3 Series just like a Mercedes, 3 Series is just like, whatever, like, are they all competing with each other in similar cars, and therefore they have to advertise, to have their brand stand out? Whereas Tesla, like, once you look at the specs and understand the specs, but that's where the problem may come in. It's just the awareness of like, do people know that a Model 3 literally outclasses everything in a BMW 3 Series from a performance perspective and from an efficiency perspective? I don't know. That's why I'm saying I'm on the side of like, you probably have to go get some better data, understand it. But what I do understand is Tesla's current thinking, and just thinking like Elon, like first principles. If I invest $1 in an engineer or buying a part that's going to help me prototype something to help me take the cost structure down, I know what the return on investment of that dollar is going to be. I don't know what it's going to be when I just throw it at ads. And to say that like BMW, these other car vendors are, they're effective at it. I don't know if that OpEx spend, and like, what's the return on that spend, relative to their profitability? It's debatable. That's why it's a debatable topic. That's why I'm open. That's what I'm saying. I'm open to getting data. So anyway, I think we've let the whole conversation go down the advertising front, but let's maybe come back and get some more speed. I think Jordan was next, and then waiting is after that. Jordan, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Hey guys, a few things. So we all know we're going for 1.8 million this year. What is everyone thinking? 2024, are we doing 2.5 million? Are we going to stay at 50% CAGR, 2.7 million? And then also, okay, we have like 22, 23 billion dollars cash. What does everyone think about lowering prices so much that, we just like basically at break even just to get more out there? And then the third thing, there actually is a penalty, even if Tesla could make and sell, let's say next year, 5 million cars. That's a very bad idea, and I'll let you guys discuss why.
I'll start. I think that the 50% CAGR is off the 2020, like the 500K numbers. I don't know if it's not 50% higher than the year before. I don't know what that number is. It's probably in the 2.3 to 2.5 range would get you there. And I think that's probably what they're going to be targeting. I don't know the implications of the IRA credit going to point of sale. I think it's going to be rather significant. So in North America, there may be a huge uptake on them. I think they're going for 2.4, 2.5, 2.3 to 2.5. And then on the margin piece, all I'll say is like, watch the video that Herbert and I did on YouTube on Monday. I'll put a number out for people so they understand. It's by reasonable estimates from Q2 to Q3, Tesla reduced COGS by $1,200 on the 3 and Y. And what Tesla did on the website last week with the Y is effectively a $400 MSRP change across, again, the global fleet of Model Ys, because only about 20% of the Model Ys that Tesla sells were affected by that price change. See, people see the alert like, oh, there's a $2 price change, and mentally in their mind of like, oh my God, to get 20%, to get 20% gross margins, I got to reduce my COGS by $1,600. And, oh my God, they're only reducing COGS by $1,200 last quarter, so they're going to be underwater. Well, no, that $2,000 change across the whole fleet is about $400 aggregate across the whole fleet when you do the math. So, and then the other thing is Tesla gets COGS reductions from their supply base, which I think is going to continue to happen. And the big one they get is from their gigafactories. So I think Q3 is going to be messy. By the way, when Tesla turned on Austin and Berlin, they had like a $4,000 hit to COGS. It was like a 12% hit to COGS when they turned on Austin and Berlin, and they're still burning that down. So the short answer to your question is I think Q4 will be the end of margin compression for the near term. I could be wrong. This is what I think. And I think Tesla has, what I don't have to think, I just know, is Tesla has stopped the across the board, the across the world price configurator changes. They stopped that in April. And everything they've done since April are smaller, non-global changes to the 3 and Y fleet. And therefore, they're allowing their COGS to catch up. Let's see what it looks like. I think Q4 will be that point.
Yeah, I love that, Jeff. I'll just say to answer that question, a 50%, and I understand what Jeff was saying with overall, but 50% year over year would be roughly like 2.7. I don't think we'll get there the way things stand now. I'm more in the 2.4 million range for next year. That would be solid for me. That's like 30% growth, but I would be pleasantly surprised. The point of sale credit is a little bit of a wild card. It could be better. And as far as you're saying, drive down, keep driving it down. We got 20 billion in cash. Well, 20 billion in cash is a lot of money, but for what Tesla's doing and the infrastructure and it's a very high intent cash business, right? To keep building factories and do things like this. So I would not, me personally, I'm okay with the volume strategy now, but what I'm not okay with is just abandoning profit at all costs. Because what will happen is if you don't have FSD ready, or if you don't have licensed deal ready, or something's not ready where other cash flows coming in, and you drive down prices so far, or because COGS and you just erode profit. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but I think that was kind of your question. You're going to kill the stock price, because what will happen is if they don't have any earnings, the multiple is going to shoot up. And if the market, if it's abrupt, the way they're doing it now, they're kind of steady state. But if they go farther and they just collapse margins, say they got like a 2 or 3% operating margin, and they're like barely making any money, well, how are you going to support, right? So you need to have some sort of cash flow and earnings, at least kind of, in balance to where you've been in the past to, support the shareholder. Because if the FSD takes a little bit longer and bot takes a little bit longer, and maybe there's not a licensing deal, you're literally going to compress the earnings so far that the valuation becomes comical, right? Especially if these things don't look like they're going to hit anytime soon. So I would not do that strategy unless you have to survive. My goal would still be try to find some ways to get demand a little bit where you can at least support the ASP a little bit out of your way, just to kind of support the shareholder and support some type of earnings.
Good. Thanks, Christian. We're going to take a couple more questions. We'll probably go to 6:45 Central. So if you don't have your hand up or you haven't requested to speak, please do that. We'll try to get through all of you. And so let's go for waiting for my Tara.
Yeah, thanks for letting me jump on the speaker board here.
Please.
Yeah, so I was thinking of, I've been thinking about this whole advertising thing, and one of the things that I just really don't, it seems to me that there's also this struggle of deciding how to do advertising in this new world, because in the traditional world, it's like, yeah, buy a Super Bowl ad to do this stuff. But really, in order to do that, you have to buy into the whole, cable advertising business. And it just seems like that's not really where the majority of the target audience will be. I mean, I don't know. I'm older. I'm going to be 59, but I think most of the people that are the demographic for buying Teslas, the under 40. And so are really they don't have cable. They get online, they have streaming services for all they only have a few minutes of eyeball time for any advertising. And that kind of comes through, any of their social media. So I think that there's a kind of a struggle in this current period of how to figure out how to do advertising. And then the other part of it is that they are in fact doing advertising in China, as we know, we've seen the ads. So it's a very regional part of business, what that demographic in that region is like, because they have state-owned TV, they can do advertising in China and it can be effective. So that makes a lot more sense. And in other other areas, it might make more sense. And finally, I'll say that one of the really big issues of doing advertising is that if you do advertising and it really creates this bubble of demand, then you could be in a position within a few months of not being able to meet that demand. And then you're putting, people off for 6 or 12 months before they can get their Model Y. So I think that better where, this gradual advertising and word of mouth seems to be, has worked for the last 10 years for Tesla and is going to continue to work, especially when Cybertruck comes out. So it doesn't seem like there's a big need there to even try it. And this idea of trying it doesn't make sense to me, because there's no way you're going to know if any ad spend actually helped or if there are other factors that increase your sales.
Yeah, I mean, you could do. I'm with you on everything you said in terms of like discoverability and what age groups and people are looking at. I mean, there is. I'm not a marketing professional, but I've worked with them and done major product launches and understood the supply demand implications of their ad spend. And there are ways to test in small markets and understand like discoverability. What did they know before the ad? What do they now know after the ad? And was it a purchase consideration? And then you can track the purchases in a various, areas and zip codes, understand like, where do they, find out about Tesla? There is some ways to do it, but it is foggy. And again, I think going back to like the way Tesla thinks in first principles, that's why they're not doing what they're doing. I do agree with you that Cybertruck alone is going to be kind of its own kind of rolling billboard. So yeah, all really good points. Thank you for bringing those up. Cool. We're going to go through a couple more. I see Adrian has his hand up. We'll go to Adrian next. And then Emmett, you got a question. And then Christian or Xander or Herbert jump in anytime. Adrian?
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off of the advertising argument. I think there's a small little problem that I think Tesla specifically does not need advertisements. I mean, what are they going to say necessarily, right? So I think the main action that could be taken is kind of like by the people who are using the tech. So like what we're doing in Spaces right now, but I have to do it in such a way where it's like a make it make sense mentality more. It's like saying, for instance, what does a car actually cost? Is it better to actually buy one of those things? And then also like piggybacking along off of that with utilities by basically saying, actually, it also costs less to keep the car running. You don't have to do as much servicing. Also, if you don't like the car as much and you don't want to use it as much, now it's also potential future financial gain as a result of autonomy, which is, by the way, going to be the most dominant thing ever, which is the reason why Tesla is practically going to sweep the board of any other companies, because they're basically the leaders in autonomy, even though nobody really speaks about it in the general sense. This is definitely a future that they are pursuing heavily, and they will be very successful in, because they have everything that is needed. They have all the ingredients for the success recipe. So, I mean, you could say, hey, if you don't want to use a car, it's a robot, right? It drives itself. Now you can practically let it drive other people for you while you are not using it. So that's another thing. So in the future, you say, okay, you have this car here, which will be safe from any kind of, legislation that would say, human driving is no longer good, or, carbon emissions is not good, that kind of thing. So I think you could target it on this level. And I really like what Tesla did a while back, is basically releasing some statistics where basically you said, here, this is the cost of the car, this is the cost of this is the cost of that. So I think the more of that you put out, the more of it will make sense, so that you don't have to do the math yourself. It's like if they do the math for you and they present it to you in a very easy, digestible manner, I think this is better than any possible ad that you can run, given that the demographic that will want to get one of those cars is not necessarily one that you'll find on cable TV. I actually think a lot of people who would buy this car specifically try to avoid TV, unless, of course, you're forced to watch it by way of keeping up with government regulation, announcements, and, general threat from Tesla Q.
I love that. And you do a better Elon than me.
Lol.
Well, one point you did bring up was like, okay, it'd be better if you showed them the data. How are you going to get the data to them if they're not in this 0.001% Twitter sphere that we're in right now?
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. But I do think that quite a lot of these accounts have a lot of reach. I mean, for myself, I actually have a really interesting type of audience group. who doesn't necessarily consider all of this, but they are interested in tech and anything that's like, and they're open-minded. You have to get this to the open-minded type of people. So it really depends on like how you would organize, probably partner with some people with big stages or make events and try to make it make sense. You have to dumb it down a lot. So I think that's really what we should be getting to. And, you know, we are in an echo chamber. This is a problem, but I think we can definitely go outside of this echo chamber if we were to like try and diversify a little bit, because when we're sitting in here, there's actually a bit of a problem. If I wanted to get what it is that you guys are talking about, I have to sit in here for quite a while because you yourself are making content for the small echo chamber, right? And so it's very long form and you have to have a lot of background and you have to sit in here for at least an hour in order to get a basic TLDR of what is going on. An average person is going to come in here and their brain turns off immediately because they don't understand half of what's going on. They first need to understand what is hardware. For instance, like people talk about that. What is this? What is that? Do I get this? Why do I get this? Why do I don't get this? What is the difference between this beta and that beta? What's the difference of Elon? It's a lot of complexity. So I think that's really what's standing in the way. And so if you try to make this data very digestible and present it to an audience group that is not the small echo chamber, you'd actually probably reach more utility. But then again, ads are not going to necessarily be the solution. Of course, you do them here on X, but then cable TV has a problem with you. But I mean, Sawyer Merritt went on, and there was a bit of a positive impact as a result of, you know, the way that the news organization had a communication that wasn't necessarily targeting FUD. It was actually good questions for the first time. And then, of course, Morgan Stanley had a good report out. I think that is practically doing the work for you. I don't think we'd ever even need advertisements because the product sells itself. And if very many of the Wall Street peers are starting to fall in line with Morgan Stanley starting at the head of the charge, I think that's really good. And I think that's what we kind of need for more mass in the market. And I mean, who's going to argue with a car that costs way less than any other car and is not necessarily at risk of any future legislation that would limit the usage of something like a gas-powered car?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I agree with you a little bit, but I disagree with you with here. You said it's hard. I don't think it's that hard. Like, I speak to my dad all the time. I speak to a lot of people. It's not that hard to let people know that you don't have to use a gas station. You could use your garage if you have one and plug in your car just like a gas station. I don't think it's that hard to tell people, okay, you're never going to have to get another oil change again, the pain in the ass oil change. You're never going to have to freeze and, you know, gas your car up. Like I said, you could do it in the garage. You also, you know, Jonas and that, you know, he's a very niche audience, right? He's talking to Wall Street. He's talking to institutional investors. The product is so compelling, but well, real quick, and then you could rebut me. The product is so compelling.
Christian, I just said he's not even on Twitter. I was just agreeing with you.
Oh yeah, no problem. So I'll wrap it up. What I'm saying is the product is so compelling and it isn't that difficult. I mean, I can understand it. I mean, it's the same thing. It looks just like a gas station. You could do it at your home. The value you get for the price of the car is so compelling. If you just do a little bit, I know you hate the word advertising, education, whatever you want to say. You can't tell me that if you put this in front of 10 million people or 5 million people or 1 million people that don't know Tesla exists, I don't care how you get in front of them, that 10% aren't going to convert to a buyer. And if 10% convert to a buyer, that's what you want, because this is sustainable energy, right? You want to get sustainable energy. Well, that was 5 million people that didn't care about sustainable energy, 5 million people that didn't care about Tesla, got it in front of them. They saw the value of it. And now 10% of them, or 500,000 or a million, now are buying your product, which is getting to your mission. So I think the hesitancy to just get it in front of people, to me, it's still we're still talking around everything. We're doing everything, doing every type of circle we can do, rather than just say, get it in front of the masses, the people in Idaho, the people in Minnesota, the people that might buy the product that just don't know it exists. I just think it's a no-brainer.
I mean, I agree with you in a lot of points there. I mean, it's like when we look at advertisements in the traditional sense, I don't think anyone's going to buy that car from a visuals perspective. That's why the point that you were making is kind of also the point that I was trying to make with education, right? You need to educate the people and basically give them the dad pitch, just like what you've done right now. Within that 1 minute, I've gotten more like background coverage out of like everything that is Tesla than you could have if you just went into any other space and just kind of sat there listening or tried to like pull it up on a website. It's like, it's really confusing. You give you a good introduction, really. So like, here's the car. Is it fast? Maybe they don't care about it. It's like, what does it do for you? You know what I mean? That's why I was trying to think about, utilities and such like that, that we kind of targeted on that approach. And I think each and every single state, even if you want to do it this way, has different requirements. So like some people are very hardcore into their trucks and they don't want to get something else, and they understand this tech, they've worked on it for generations, perhaps even, as it goes, you probably want to take your son there and, you want to tell him how to do an oil change, it's a nice little bonding time or whatever. I think that's another thing that will stand in your way, is like the cultural element. But then also, even if you don't do the advertisement, the transition to buying more of those cars is kind of inevitable, because I think that at least by the end of the decade, most of the current existing car companies, even if they attempt to create EVs, will in fact fail and go bankrupt and will just not exist anymore, because they cannot match Tesla in terms of not only its production, but also in terms of something such as autonomy, which will be basically the killing blow. That's the killing blow right there. Autonomy is that they're going to maximize, and that's practically going to take over. So regardless of ad or no ad, I think they're still going to make the same amount of money. It just depends on how fast they do it. Maybe they may even make a little bit more because of, advertising, or in this case, education. But it really depends on how you would do it. So probably your approach, in comparison to a lot of other people who say show flashy car, may even be a lot better suited for advertising. So maybe you should run an ad. I don't know. It would be kind of cool. Like random X ad. Any one of us has the ability, if you haven't had violations in the past, you could probably run an ad and see how it performs. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, this is a space. This is a safe space where we can debate and have the conversation. It's not like cult. I mean, it's not cultish. It's like we can have an open conversation about it and the pros and cons. It's totally fine. And I think there's valid points on both sides of this debate. So I think you both make great
not
points.
disagreeing. I'm actually agreeing with you in the sense, like, this is the make it make sense argument. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. You just made it make sense to a certain extent. We're meet in the middle of what we want to achieve in terms of onboarding.
We're going through that. Good discussion. Emmett.
I really appreciate Jeff's steady state comment when it relates to our cash balance in the bank and our rough margins. I think that's really healthy. For me, as an investor and enthusiast, there's 3 parallel activities that I think are critical. 2, they appear to be doing a really good job on, and that is quality. They're putting a lot of focus on quality and improving things, continuous improvement. The second item is maximizing production to the capacity of each factory. I suspect, I'm pretty confident in this, the reason why capacity has come down is because they've been focused on the first one a little bit. They've been doing some tweaks in the factories, but now most of those tweaks are done and they're going to be able to ramp up capacity. So those 2, I think, are really critical. And the third one that I think they're starting to wake up to, but we still need to encourage them, is specifically education. And it's different than advertising. Education is removing the veils of ignorance across the nation and eventually across the world. All the reasons and use cases that Teslas are kick ass, the way they make people's lives better, and just how to do different things. And that's something that I hope they'll hire. To me, it should be under the marketing department. I hope they hire more marketing staff, but with the focus on education across multiple use cases.
Yeah, Emmett, always really good points. I mean, brilliant. I agree with you. By the way, there's one thing we haven't talked about with advertising, and it's actually dealing with disinformation. If you watch, if you read, or you read a lot of, remember who controls a lot of the media. There's like 4 to 6 major companies that control all the media that we view, if it's on TV, if it's in print, or so forth. And they're driving an agenda. And I mean, in my family and friends and other people's, I'm sure, family and friends, if they're consuming certain types of media, even not certain types of media, almost anything, they're going to be told that batteries in electric vehicles fail inside of 3 years and they need to be replaced, and they cost, $10,000 to $15,000 to replace. They're going to be told that, you lose half the range in the cold. They're going to be told that there's nowhere to charge them. They're going to be told, you run out of battery, you're screwed. They're going to be told that, my mom was told that all the EVs are made out of plastic and they just crumple up in accidents and they're very dangerous. And these people are being fed this stuff nonstop because there's an oil complex. There's also a big auto complex. They don't want to do this transition to EV because they don't have the economics straightened out yet. So in this whole conversation of advertising, the one thing that people I think get stuck on and they don't have an answer to is like, are you going to deal with all the disinformation out there on EVs that could actually be there's a reason why the US is at 8% adoption and Europe's at 18 and China's north of 25%. There's a reason for that. It's not just like whatever, like there's disinformation out there. There's incentives that are going in the other direction. Now, some of those incentives have recently changed, but anyway, just in the whole advertising, conversation, we don't talk about disinformation enough. There's a population like people, Christian said, like that need to be educated, just aren't aware. And there's a lot of that population that have actually been slanted away from like EVs are bad. And how do you deal with that? So you may not get all those people, but that problem is out there. So thanks for raising those topics, Emmett, VC.
Hey, hi. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I was just thinking, regarding the continuous price erosion, right? Let's think about it in the long term. Where would the prices of these EVs be? Are you expecting them to stay stable, or are you expecting still a very significant cost reduction in terms of COGS and all that, right? So over
COGS
time,
are going to keep going down. COGS are going to keep going down. To answer your question, I expect that to continue. And people are like, oh no, it's gonna like point. No, not in the life cycle of a consumer device. They will continue going down. Tesla will be rotating suppliers. They will be reinventing how to build a car. So COGS will continue to come down. Price changes have slowed. This is what people don't understand. If you just like read these people's tweets that are getting apoplectic about price changes, they're not putting it in proper context for you. Tesla's price changes have dramatically slowed down.
Yep. So in this direction, so if the prices of components and cost of goods continues to go down, their margins will keep going up if they do not do a price reduction. And that also creates a problem. Why? Because people would also realize that, they're making a huge margin. They should be reducing the prices. This is for the long term, maybe at least a year ahead, right? So that will create a bit of cognitive dissonance with the consumers. So I think if we start thinking that, people at Tesla are not as intelligent in terms of marketing and advertising, I think that's a wrong perspective. They have a longer vision in terms of their overall objective to elect the transport industry. So if I were, as eccentric as Elon is, and I say, I don't care. I just want to electrify as many cars as possible in the shortest time possible. So what do? I drop the prices and keep my margins at a reasonable level. And we don't understand what is his reasonable level. Be it 18, 20, or even as close to 30. But 30 is definitely not a good margin to maintain. It's a good margin level for the early adopters, whereby they don't care. They just want to show off. I'm an early adopter. I want to impress my friends. And that is the 8% of the consumers in America, which is still the case. But if you look at the rest of the world, in China and all that, it is no longer the case. The percentage has gone up, as we have mentioned earlier. And it's no longer that it's a fad thing. No, it's no longer a fad thing. It's going to be mainstream. So if you look at, you are from Motorola, so am I. I was in Motorola in 2007, 2008. And we understand that if you continuously drop your prices and your volumes continue to increase, you have that ability to drop even further. It's just economics of scale. Your tools basically become free after a certain volume because you already incorporated the depreciation of your tools over maybe 1 million pieces. But over time, if they have achieved 1 million pieces, that tool basically, or that equipment basically is free because they have already accommodated the cost of that. So over time, that I believe is the objective. If you read clearly or fully entrench yourself with their vision and their objective, then it is to just move to EV. They don't care. right?
Yeah.
And that is
Yeah. So I think, thank you, Vincent, for bringing it up. I think the bottom line is, and just really brief, because we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon, is just investors want to know, like, what's the plan, or like, and do you have a plan to stabilize margins? So they said that their target's 20%. So, okay, show us on the next call your path to 20% versus saying you don't have a crystal ball. That's what I would be. So if I were being a little bit critical of Tesla, that's what I would say. But in general, you're right that they're saying the variable cost of the metal, the hardware, eventually, the tools are one thing, but you're still buying raw materials and you're still converting it. But they're saying in general, the variable cost could get to, on its way to zero.
If you're talking about building the whole factory and all that, whereby you're talking about Texas and Berlin, now you have a huge reduction in your cost of goods in that perspective, of your capital portion of it, right? So if they do a sudden drop of, wow, a lot of thousands of dollars, which is what they did for Model S and Model X, then you'll feel the pinch, because those who have bought the cars just a few days before would have lost it, that amount of value, right? So you have to, I think Elon wants to retain all his customers. If you want to buy a car and then it depreciates by 30,000 tomorrow, you'll be pissed off. So let's not.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I am one of those people.
But they will be pissed off because they are not like us who are fully understanding of their vision and mission, right? So if perspective, then you understand that he wants to retain his customers. He wants to have a 68 or 69% or even higher of retaining. So if I bought a Tesla, then my next car will still be a Tesla. Even though I lost money on it, I still buy a new Tesla because it is cheaper. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Basically, thank you. Thanks for your comments. We got to get rolling. I think they're really good. Dawn, last question, and we're going to close out the space.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. I'm going to ask a question. I came in late, so I might be a little off point, but I heard about trying to get the information out and, the advertising to people and, converting, so many people to EVs and the misinformation. I see trucks, electric trucks, and it kind of cracks me up with generators in the back of their truck. So when they run out of electric juice, they sit on the side of the road with a generator. And I'm sure lots of other people have seen that. But my concern is, I think, in general, that people definitely, want more sustainable energy, and I don't think they're opposed to EV. The issue is so many people that can't afford a new car, period, whether it's an EV or not. And when they start imposing taxations or penalties or whatever for having gasoline vehicles, what's that going to do for the, lower class or the middle, working class that, due to the economy losing, businesses, the COVID, just everything, have crappy credit, can't afford to go, because of credit or income or whatever, and get these? How are we going to bridge that gap for lower income working class people to get into EVs and not be, hit with these penalties and stuff?
Yeah, the average cost of a Tesla is less than the average car of a of an ICE vehicle. Now, what Tesla is doing, that's fact number one. Fact number two is Tesla's working on bringing that down even further. Right now, with credits and incentives, you can get a Tesla below $30,000. And what Tesla's trying to do is, without credits or incentives, sell a Tesla under $30,000 in the United States. And then if there are still incentives remaining, then great, then that'll probably bring it below $20,000. But Tesla's working on basically meaningfully taking the cost structure down enough so even the entry-level vehicle in the United States, in the $20,000 range, could be an electric vehicle. That's the answer to your question.
Yeah, and real quick, Jeff, that was a good answer. To the price parity, like with a state, like if you're in a state, you get a few thousand, 7,500, you can get a Model 3 for like 30,000. So what I would say is, and this is not to be political, this is just logic. We have the leading front runner for the Republican nominee talking about EVs in the sense of, I don't want the golf cart. I got to get in at 20 miles. Where am I going to charge? So again, that is going to millions and millions of people. And if you don't think millions and millions of people, that's their entire research, you think they're going to go to that next level? No, that's it. I've spoken to millions of people, especially the older. They go, I heard on TV, to Jeff's point, the understanding, right? They said this, they said there's no charging. So again, this is not rocket science. There's a network that's already built out by Tesla, right? The cost of the car, simple to understand. Just get that in front of people. Understand it. You could charge in a garage. And again, like I said before, the supercharger, you get anywhere across in the United States. So if you don't think that the bigger problem is not the affordability now, the bigger problem, because it is cheaper. The problem is nobody knows about the affordability. And again, when you have, again, I'm not trying to pick on anyone, but when you have one of the most famous people in the world talking about EVs like they're little plastic toy things that don't go more than 20 miles, you got a problem.
And to Jeff's point about misinformation, Dawn started her statement, and I'm not picking on you, Dawn, but you said that there's generators that are being pulled by electric vehicles, and I've never seen that except in a meme. So that's definitely something that where Tesla needs to educate, because that's not actually happening anywhere. Like Christian said, the supercharger network is very robust, and you can drive cross country without any issues.
Yeah, but they're not super robust in rural states like West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and stuff like that. And I have most definitely myself personally seen electric trucks with a gas generator in the back of it sitting on the side of the road trying to juice up their batteries. In areas like California, big metropolitan areas, yeah. But in, Appalachian states and more rural areas, there's not a lot of these charging stations.
Understood. Yeah, I guess later on in, that there isn't as much demand in those areas. So, but I've never seen that. But okay.
You're absolutely correct. A little bit of it is the chicken and the egg. In terms of wealth, the fact that the used cars, especially the Model 3 long range rural drive, are getting to the point where they're below 25K and they're going to get the $4,000 tax credit, that's really going to help the lower income individuals be able to afford a Tesla and have that transformation in their lives. Number two, it's going to take 2 to 3 years to get to some serious volume production on the trucks. Once we're actually in volume production, then the parts of America that has low representation for Tesla, they're going to start to get it and want it. And in between now and then, Tesla has to increase the rollout for the more rural areas of the charging networks.
Yeah, thanks for your question. So, hey, we're 2 hours into this and we're kind of past the promised time. I don't know if Christian or Xander or Herbert had any closing comments other than that. But I mean, if you have anything, speak up. Otherwise, we were going to close the space. We thank everybody for joining, and follow the Cyberbulls One account. We should have actually had that account join the space so you see it, and then follow the speakers and the hosts. If you like what you hear, if this is informative, if this was a good use of your time, give them a follow. It helps them actually proliferate information further and help with that education problem. So give them a follow. And thanks to all the speakers that joined on the panel that added to it. You guys and gals were great. So thank you all. Thanks everyone for listening. And then, we have a YouTube and X video podcast on Fridays called Cyberbulls. It comes out usually in the morning on Fridays, and you'll hear the whole panel of us. We'll go through a number of issues, the latest and greatest in EV. And then we also do some one-on-ones throughout the week on Brighter with Herbert's channel. So if there's no other comments, Christian, Xander, Herbert, we can close the space. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff. Good stuff.
You guys.